before getting a definition of what inquiry-based learning is, I like to start off with this question. What does inquiry mean? Okay, for me, inquiring is like exploring, you know? It is a whole process of going beyond what we normally do every day at school, home, or work, for instance. I mean, is when you give yourself the opportunity to discover and experiment in new ways of learning, for example. We know that we are responsible for our own learning, right? So why don't we start thinking outside the box and give our learning process a challenge? What do you think? Now, inquiry-based learning is an approach not only to teaching but for learning too. And it is about how learners put themselves at the core of the learning experience through questions, ideas, objectives, desires, and the like.
So, talking about the characteristic of inquiry-based learning that requires more than a simple answering question or getting right answer, it exposes research, exploration, pursuit, also quest, search, study, and investigation. First, we have the engage students' curiosity, that is to stimulate students' curiosity, encouraging them to actively explore and seek new evidence. So, the foundation of this method is to establish and develop background knowledge. In the second characteristic, students direct the line of inquiry and the methods employed. In this case, students are placed at the center of the learning process and presenting with greater independence and decisions relating to the learning. It means a collaborative knowledge. So move on at the third aspect. The inquiry requires students to draw on existing knowledge and to identify their required learning needs. That refers about the connection and the engage students' worlds. So it means the students draw their own collective knowledge. For example, working collaboratively in a group might entail identifying their required learning needs throughout the process of asking questions. So that it means that what students want to learn. Let's go to the fourth characteristic. Talking about students is the center of the learning process. They are so independent. Students could work collaboratively. As I said before, let students require learning needs also. And the last characteristic is about the inquiry requires in which students develop their critical thinking. That is the number 5. That is exploratory. And in that way, meaningful representation of knowledge and understanding. So that is some of the characteristics of the inquiry-based learning.
Talking about the different roles in inquiry-based learning, we know that this technique requires different roles in the classroom. For example, the teacher's role is critical in inquiry learning, but the role is different from all we've done or we have seen during all this our learning. So we know that we call the teacher provocateur, and it is also the leader. The teacher becomes the leader of the learning, yeah, because he starts being the guide of the students during the whole process. Also, the teacher is the facilitator of the learning process, yeah. The teacher becomes the person that helps the students or give the students the basis to start learning. The teacher is also a modeling for younger learners, because it's the first model they have of a person in their learning process. Now, moving on to the students, we know that the students are the center of this method or this technique, because the students are the ones that propose and create the path. So that's this another role of the student. the student needs to create their own path by asking their own questions. Now, the third role is that the students might find easier, or some students might find easier to ask questions, and others may find easier to answer those questions. So the students contribute ideas, they inquire, and they also answer their own questions. Now, the final role of the student is to conclude on their own and think on themselves. That creates an autonomous learning here in the classroom.
Inquiry-based learning has some incredible advantages. It can be flexible and adaptable. It means that teachers can use it with any topic or subject in all levels of education as an add-on strategy. Furthermore, it reinforces several skills simultaneously since questions demand students to demonstrate what they know using the language communicatively. One disadvantage we found was that this is time demanding, so teachers need to provide students with the time for them to develop their own cognitive process. Inquiry-based learning has some incredible advantages. It can be flexible and adaptable. It means that teachers can use it with any topic or subject in all levels of education as an add-on strategy. Furthermore, it reinforces several skills simultaneously since questions demand students to demonstrate what they know using the language communicatively. And this method helps students to build self-esteem because their opinion matters for constructing the class interaction. One disadvantage was found, and is that it is time demanding because teachers need to provide students with the time for them to develop their own cognitive processes.
Inquiry-based learning has many kinds of strategies, and it depends on the teacher's creativity to design those kind of activities. Some strategies in order to trigger curiosity in a classroom were found while we were doing research on internet. Use factoids. Use factoids to provoke questions. Ask students to observe, think, and question about themselves and about the topic they are developing in the classroom. This activity fosters students' active participation in the beginning of the class. Including a picture also helps students to have access to their applied knowledge and start wondering about certain issues. Reading and coding system. Reading about an interesting topic is a great way to open up new questions. It helps students to have new ideas, and it is also helpful for students to use a coding system to monitor their thinking as they read. It is a great idea to use paper sticky notes to guide the process. Questioning about questions. Instead of thinking about what good questions the teacher should ask, think about asking students questions in response to their ideas. Ask students to expand and elaborate more on their own questions. Teachers could try pushing students thinking forward by asking the following questions. What do you wonder about? Does this suggest any new approaches, ideas to you who are investigating? Or what kind of connections can you make? Designer architecture for participation. Use every tool you have in your disposal as a framework for students to build their learning around. Social networks can be fruitful this time, and Twitter is a resource for students to share ideas, respond, and mark ideas that have caught their attention. Students are able to offer their own opinions, participating in the conversation. Thinking about thinking. Ask students to reflect on what worked about the process and what didn't. Reflection is the key in this process, and it isn't just about asking to think back on their opinion about certain topic. It's about reflecting on the process itself. That's where you can work in metacognition, that is thinking about thinking, or thinking about how they learn instead of thinking about what what they learn. Artifacts. Have students present what they have learned. Students should create and present culminating artifacts because many people can understand content, but can they communicate what they have learned? Research in the class. It's crucial to have some of class work for students to have access to the internet in the room. That is the task of the teacher to guide the students and model methods of researching. Child talk. It's an engaging conversation that happens in silence, so that all voices are listened. First, pose a topic, add a statement, starter, or a question on a shared paper for small groups. Use roller paper that extends 10 to 20 feet so that 20 to 30 participants can be involved in the activity. Then, participants communicate through writing with markers, asking questions and making comments to the prompts and to each other posts. And visually, participants create a web of ideas and questions that fan the flames of curiosity. And this activity takes approximately 10 minutes. It is important to review these collected thoughts for ideas and questions to be discussed and explored as a part of a larger reflective experience at the end.
The evidence they have collected before. The fourth level is open inquiry. In this level, students have the opportunity to act like scientists, deriving questions, designing and carrying out investigations, as well as communicating their results. The role of the teacher in the three first levels is of high involvement, but in the last one, that is open inquiry, it is more like the autonomy and the independence of the students, the motivation, the intrinsic motivation the student has.
Now we're gonna see the cycle of inquiry-based learning in the teaching act, but especially in the students' implication, and finally, we're gonna appreciate some relevant aspects in this regard. Number 1. Ask. Students formulate their own questions related to the learning subject. Here the teacher is who must ask the right questions, because then teacher will use the students' inquiries and question as guidance in the planning stage of his classes. Based on the students' answer, teachers create lessons that engage and excite. In the development of those English classes, inquiry-based learning states that it's a priority to teach their students to be active thinkers rather than passive learners. But this is of course a scaffolded process which starts with the questions characterized by accuracy in depth from the teacher. Here we can notice a range of examples of those kind of questions. What do you already know about this topic? What do you want to find out? What questions do you have? How will you source the information? Why might we be studying this topic? What sort of thinking would be useful for this task? Meanwhile, a good start for teachers could be that they ask themselves, what do students want to learn? What are they wondering about? The responses will allow teachers to see what topic students are really inquisitive about as they plan the lesson. And those lessons have to touch the students' curiosity, and what is more, they have to touch their lives. Number 2. Investigate. Students collect information, experiment, and exploit resources. Another relevant topic to mention is that students are asked to answer, but true is that inquiry it is also a teacher responsibility. Hence, we have to teach kids since the very beginning how to ask questions, even how to evaluate information. Asking is a habit formation. The classroom requires good questions, not the easiest one, yes/no questions. Number 3. Create. Students generate new thoughts, ideas, and theories that are not directly inspired by their own experiences. Number 4. Discuss. Students share their ideas with each other and ask others about their own experiences and investigations. Once students have asked a certain topic, teacher doesn't give an answer because the ideal situation is that teacher work with them in order to find an answer. Number 5. Reflect. Students think again about the initial questions, the path taken, and the actual conclusions, and maybe take some new decisions. To sum up, we have to be aware of each question from students. Is an opportunity to explore and indeed to learn.
10 reasons to use inquiry-based learning. The first one is nurture a student's passion and talent. An example of this, it could be let students take control. When students believe they are in control of their own learning, they value it twice as much as they would otherwise. Allow 20 minutes for students to design their own school schedules, complete with periods devoted to video games and basketball if they want, and see what interests you can identify and incorporate into your lessons. Second reason, empower student voice and honor student choice. You can take into account 4 principles that are space, place, voice, and choice. In the first one, space, it could be dynamic. In the second, in place, it could be that reflects their need. In voice, you can use classroom conversation, and in choice, you can use content a priority. The third reason is increase motivation and engagement. 2 ways to promote intrinsic motivation in the classroom are: the first one, challenge the students to find a new solution to an old problem. And the second one is incorporate the student's life and story into the classroom. 4 reasons. Foster curiosity and a love of learning. There are 4 stages of curiosity. The first one is process. Tell me what to do. Learner needs in this stage repetition, instruction more than one, instruction in multiple forms. For example, using the voice, using the board, or another kind of resource. The second one is content. This is interesting. I would like to learn more. Learner needs in this stage content and appropriate level, choice, and voice in their work. The third is transfer. Move out of my way, but not too far. Learner needs at this stage flexible rubrics, scoring guides that promote creativity, open-ended learning models. Learn in the fourth stage is self. This has changed. Learner needs in this stage dynamic tools, strategic collaboration, cognitive and emotional coaching. Fifth reason, teach grit, perseverance, growth mindset, and self-regulation. It means that you can encourage your students that they can do the things using their own knowledge and also using the new knowledge in order to achieve a goal. Sixth reason, make research meaningful and develop research skills. It can promote curiosity, and complex reading skills are applied to multiple sources. 7th reason. Deepen understanding to go beyond facts and content. Select tools that help students design and personalize their learning experience. Also, choose tools that support effective classroom instruction. 8th reason. Fortify the importance of asking good questions. You can use Socratic discussion. Students learn together by talking together in an open and student-centered format. You can use also basic question STEM examples. Which differences between blank and blank stand out to you? What does blank never seem to blank? 9th reason. Enable students to take ownership of their learning and to reach their goals. Let them watch their prediction play out. Let them form theories and immediately test and revise those theories based on observation. 10th reason. Solve the problems of tomorrow in the classrooms of today. Compile. Reality opportunity. Reality. The ability to save and retrieve information in a variety of formats. Opportunity. Give model learning virtually unlimited capacity to retrieve and store information. Contribute. Reality. The ability to participate in more complex projects. Opportunity. Enables learners to participate in more complex projects. Combine. Reality. The ability to reuse and build upon the work of others. Opportunity. Allows learners to move beyond individual and isolated projects. Change. Reality. The ability to quickly obtain feedback from multiple sources. Opportunity. Enables learners to continuously improve work.